Hello everyone, Ted Simpson here, Certified Bob Ross Instructor. Let me show you this crazy thing we're doing up here today. I'm doing a painting off of Bob's unfinished season 32. This was painted for that new season by Nicholas Hankins. And I'm going to be painting today on some ancient paints that I have off of a master kit that I bought. The master kit itself is over 30 years old. So we've got our white, our phthalo blue, our alizarin crimson. Look at that Van Dyke brown. Look how firm it is. It didn't even soften coming out, just a thin little worm there. Some Prussian blue, midnight black, sap green, phthalo green, cadmium yellow. I'm not sure if that cadmium yellow is going to work. Yellow ochre and bright red. Again, super stiff. It was almost like, it felt like it was wanted to break. It was already like half dried. But sometimes there, paints, even in the tube, will start to seize up a little bit. Some work just fine. Others, something happened to it over the years. So, what do I always start out with here? We got to get our liquid white up on the canvas so you guys can see how that works. I take my 2-inch brush. Ooh, that's way too much. Okay, a little less next time, but using the 2-inch brush, boy, it makes this process really, really quick on a small canvas, that's for sure. But I like to just work it in there. Sometimes you get canvases that are a little bit smoother. They need even less liquid white. If you get canvases that are a little toothier, so to speak, lots of big nooks and crannies, it might take you a little bit more liquid white or a little bit more elbow grease to work it in. Alright, let's see how I did. How did I do? Light little tap. I think we did okay. Once again here, did not prepare everything, but I got it mostly. Just going to clean my brush here, pull off some of that liquid white, and I'm going to graze over the canvas, and it pulls off a thin amount. With every once over you give the canvas, it'll pull off some of that excess liquid white, should you need it. Yeah, I can wipe it with a paper towel. Sometimes we will do that. Other times you just take out a little bit. No big deal. Okay. Can't get my trash can over here. So, what are we doing? This Lakeside sunset painting. I'm going to try to recreate it. It's not going to be exact. I'm just watched the episode and said, oh, I can do that, I think. I know what I should do. I should film myself doing it for the first time. Ooh, yeah, look how thick that paint is. It takes a little bit of effort to get some down and into the brush. We'll see how that works. So, a little bit of cadmium yellow. We're going to work in to the sky here. How much yellow is up to you? Well, that was simple. And then let's have a little bit, get a little more of that color. A little bit of the yellow down as a reflection in the water. Simple enough. Now, Nick this time, a little bit of bright red and yellow ochre. Don't make that combination enough, especially for the sky. Little bright red, a little yellow ochre. Find the flavor that works for you. I keep going over it. Which one do I want? Which one do I want? And let's zing in some of that color. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Something like that. Something? That is something. Now I take a little bit more of that color and pull from the outside in. I pull a little further here at the bottom. I want to create almost like a V shape or a funnel shape, whatever you want to call it. Boy, that yellow ochre changes the flavor, that's for sure. It kind of oranges it. There we go. Now without cleaning the brush, we're going to come into, oh my gosh, look at that alizarin crimson. It's a little shinier. It's got a little bit more oil kind of separated. So take a little bit of that, oh, that ruby. I call it ruby red sometimes. I know we call it crimson. It's called crimson. To me, it just looks so ruby-like. I love this color. There we go. Boy, this is just cruising right along. And let's have a little bit of this crimson down here. Now, in this episode, of course, Nick uses a 18 by 24 canvas, and I'm just using a 12 by 16 little guy. So, could I finish this one in the same amount of time it took Nick? I'm not trying to, but it's certainly possible. Let's see here. Now that I've got my crimson in there, let's work some more into the brush. Come over here, grab a touch of the phthalo blue. And I think Nick might have added a hint of the midnight black. We're trying for a purple color here. Now, don't get too commenty if I don't follow Nick exactly. We're not always trying to make an exact copy, and I might miss something here. I'm just playing around. I saw the sky, and every time you do this, don't worry if it's a little bit different and your colors aren't the same. It's all gonna be fine. Just fine. Fine. So when I first put it on, it's a little bit more to the red side of purple. If I come back and add some blue to spots here and there, I don't think the painting police will mind. Take a little bit of that color. Oop, almost forgot. A little bit of phthalo green into that mix. And let's pull some across. Left side, right side. Mostly from the outside in. But if you have a spot like I did there, a little bit light on the liquid white, you just got to work it a little harder. A couple of zings back and forth isn't going to hurt, typically. There we go. So, fun times here. I'm going to wipe out some of the paint onto the paper towel just to get the bulk off, and then I dip it into my paint thinner. Tap, tap, swirl, swirl. Drag, drag. Tap, tap. Uh-oh, my beater bucket's way over here. There we go. Nick and Bob both did these paintings there in a studio, so they can beat the devil out of it. But for me, I'm down in my basement and it makes a mess. So I got a backdrop here. I can give it a little devil beating, but that's about it. So, clean, dry brush. Make sure it's dry. You can dab it on a paper towel even after you beat the devil out of it. And I'm just going to soften these colors here, working from the lightest to the darkest, meaning from the middle up. The idea is to create some little blurring effects, all these different transitions between colors. Can't really tell where one color ends and the next begins. One of the things that you have to be concerned about is dragging the colors too far in, or else all that yellow will just get eaten up. You can see a little bit of it will disappear. So once you get a little practice going, you'll be able to predict there, do a little bit more yellow, so when the other colors overlap it, you'll have the right amount left over. And if you need to go over it again, you clean your brush, you start in the middle again. That way you don't accidentally drag the colors in. There we go. For the water, I brush a little bit here of the first colors, then I drag all the way across. Look at that. Who knows how much of this water we're really going to see. I can bring some of that purple up a little bit. Keep it nice and dark there in the corners. Boy, oh boy, that just works without any effort whatsoever. Look at all these various cloud formations that just automatically come out. Ooh, you just want to play with it forever. But don't. But don't. There's no need. All right. So what do we do next? Well, we find our palette knife, and we're going to make up a color here. Actually, I can use a little bit of that. Crimson. A little bit of the phthalo blue. Maybe a little bit of Prussian blue. And some titanium. Say it with me. Titanium white. Ooh-wee, this is some old paint. That titanium white feels like some kind of caulking compound or something. It is. I'm going to have to try a mountain. It'd probably work really well for the mountains. But I'm going for kind of a... Oh, that was black. I didn't add any Prussian blue. There it is. That grayish lavender. White, crimson and blue, a little bit of black, and maybe a touch of Prussian blue. So that'll dull everything down. Maybe a little more black. Let's see what that does. There you go. Clean my knife. Oh man, I'm gonna have sore arms or something. That paint is troublesome. Troublesome to mix, but it's working really fine just to paint with. So, pick up some of that color. Back and forth in my 1-inch brush. Give it some taps. Pull back and forth. Tap, tap, tap. And let's make a wee little foothill back here. Or a mountain, I don't know what it is. We haven't decided on that yet. Something like that. I think I'm going to need another clean 1-inch brush. If you're painting at home and you got all the time in the world, you can clean your brush a lot. But if I just take a clean brush for my blending, bringing it on down, where do I want it? I want it right on down to the water's edge here, maybe a little bit longer. There we go. That way I can bring this down a little bit more. There we go. And let's destroy the bottom here, create a little bit of mist and such. And then with that little bit of paint, put in a quick little reflection there. With my 2-inch brush, I pull it down again and drift sideways. Ooh, and it blurs and disappears. Very nice. So, as we're working our way forward here, things just need to get a little bolder, a little darker. So, let's come back in a little bit of the Prussian blue. Maybe a touch more of the crimson and Prussian blue. That's going to help offset the white, of course, and make things a little bit darker. Maybe a little more crimson, blue, and black. We just want it distinctly bolder. Okay, there we go. Now, this foothill is a little taller. It comes down and overlaps the first one. Ooh, that was a nice pause, huh? It overlaps the first foothill. And you see here, as I run out of paint, things are automatically getting lighter as I come down to the water's edge. A little bit of paint in my brush, pull the bottom just to get things going here. Now I could take my, I'm skipping brushes here. Let me clean my misting brush turned dirty. Create our mist here. Very lightly. You don't have to use the 2-inch brush. Mist that out. Now Nick here moved on forward here, and we're, oh my God, we're going to be adding, hopefully, boy, that brown is firm. Let's add some brown to our mix and a little bit of crimson, I believe. Again, changing the flavor to something a little bit different, a little bit bolder, less white, darker mix. And this one here overlaps a little bit. Well, that took a little longer than I thought, but with the magic of editing, you guys didn't know. So look at this. I'm going to create a little bit more mist here. And just by tapping with the dry brush, it will mist out. Now, I pick up a little bit of paint. If I want to extend this down, maybe make it not so high, or adding little bits to this mountain, I can pick up a little bit of color and put it down here. And look at that. We can create like other sections of this same little foothill entity. Okay? And, well, once again, I'll come back up here with the brush that had the paint in it. Pull some down. Use my cleaner brush. Mist it out. And, oh gosh, well, we're doing one more here, I believe. Oh boy. So with this last one, it has to be even darker still. A little bit more of the midnight black. Midnight black. A little bit of that ungodly firm brown. And maybe a touch. Oh, here's the sap green. This one's been in the tube forever. Oh, that color still works though. It's a little firm, but it still works. And let's make one more footy hill here. This one kind of comes up and over. I just realized at the last second, right before I tapped, I'm like, don't kill all the yellow. I killed almost all the yellow. There's a little bit left here and there. Just enough for us to see it and know that we tried. Come down a little bit. Ooh, maybe a little bit lower still. Look at that. I won't fill it all in so we can see a little bit of yellow in this sort of a two-stage foothill down here. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. I love this painting, Nick. This is a class for sure. Now, something here that Nick was doing throughout putting these foothills in was creating hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of trees. How do we do that? Well, we just come up here and lift barely. Barely. You don't see a lot of these when you're, walking in the room and it's across the way there. But as you get up, you're like, hey, isn't there some texture on the top of those foothills? Let me take a look. And then when you get up closer, you're like, oh, yes, I was right. All sorts of trees working their way right off the top. Keep them vertical and keep them small. That helps sell the effect that these are way off in the distance. Whoop, whoop. Just what you want to hear when you're painting. Whoop. All right, so let's take a very small amount of liquid white and some of this overly firm titanium white. Mash it together. And let's get that small bit on the edge of the knife. Create a little water line here and there. Just taking it and sawing it. Keep it relatively flat, and it's going to work. I always say to my students, this is a very subtle effect. You don't need a lot. No, you don't have to keep adding more and more and more. So there we go. We got a little thing going on here. Got all 4 of the foothills in. I think the colors match up pretty well with what Nick did. This is the first time doing it, so of course there's always things I want to change. Maybe a little less here so we could see more mist. But as I got done with it, the more mist with each successive foothill, and it worked out okay. What's next? A big old batch of color. Set that aside. I think I'm going to do a couple paintings today, and the videos I were watching use that lavender color, so I might be able to use that one again. So let's take all of my crimson, a little bit of phthalo blue, a little bit of Prussian blue, some of this black and brown, and green. Oh, here we go. Now I notice that crimson is a little bit softer than normal, so any residual oil in the crimson is going to mix with these stiffer paints and thin them down a little bit as I work them together. Thank goodness. Ooh-wee. A little bit more green, maybe a touch of the phthalo green. I'm mixing that. I'm trying to incorporate a little bit of oil. If I wanted to thin it down a little bit more, just a single drop of paint thinner. And let's incorporate just a drop at a time. We don't want to turn this soupy. Give that paint thinner a little bit of time to work. Mix it in and thoroughly, and I can already tell it's starting to loosen up. Okay, I tell you what, I'm going to put another drop in there. I wanted to loosen up a little bit more, so spreading it out, gathering it back up, spreading it down, incorporating that thinner. That's working a lot better. Okay, so let's make some trees. Picking up some of that dark color. Oh, that is a nice color. I'm liking it. The consistency is just right now. A couple drops of that paint thinner was just the trick. All right, so it looks like we're going to make a little island out here in the water. Tap in a little bit of a topper to this tree. And then tapping. As long as you come down into the water, it makes sense. It's closer. And how many of these little trees do you want on your mystery island? Couple, 3, 4, probably just the right amount for the space we have allotted here. Tapping, letting the bristles do the work here. And maybe if I push up, see how the bristles bend a different way and automatically adds a little bit of foliage. Helps look like there's a bunch of stuff underneath the trees there. And grab just a little bit of that, just a little bit. Pull some of it down. Maybe where the trees are, I pull down just a little further. And soften it. Super simple. Now I think Nick put a couple little rocks in there, and he used the filbert brush to put in some of those little round stones, but I'm just going to play around with and add a couple of little stones here with a little bit of that Van Dyke brown. And then to highlight it, a little bit of the brown mixed with my white. And I have that little bit of titanium and liquid white mixture there, so I'm going to get a little bit of that on my knife and highlight this little rock clump here. There we go. If it's a little hard to see, you can hit it again. There we go, a little bit of the pure white. Now, for the sake of ease, I'm going to use another brush here to make my highlight color. Now this cadmium yellow is awfully firm here, so I'm going to use it the liquid white, kind of like paint thinner, to start working some of this down. Back and forth, pulling both sides of the brush, maybe a little bit of yellow ochre in there, just to get something workable. And a little bit of the green, maybe a little bit of my undercolor, maybe even a touch of blue, Prussian or phthalo, maybe a little bit of phthalo green. Oh, hello. And it starts hitting you. You find that color that works. And doesn't need much highlight, that's for sure. These are a little too far away still, off in the distance. But they see some. There we go. Now, a little less paint on my brush, mixing it, changing the flavor, a little bit of yellow ochre mixed in it now. I'm just going to push up. I'm just going to make some little push-up grass down here. It's a little A little simpler, a little quicker. Put in a little indication there. And there's our little island. A touch of the liquid white, titanium white mix. And we'll put a little water line under there. Again, very small, subtle effect. And there's our little island. Isn't that fun? We're cranking it. This is awesome. This is moving right along. So, one tree section is nice. That means 2 tree sections will be even nicer, right? Of course. Tapping. Letting the bristles bend. Reloading the brush. Starting from the middle and working out. We can make the big trees just as easily as the small trees. And maybe you can make a change here now and again. This is just the dark part, so you don't need to go and play around with it forever. Just get it a little wider at the bottom than it is at the top, and then move on. Let's see here. Oop. Let's make it a little taller. You drop in an idea of a trunk. It's just really more of a center line, other than this little bit at the top. And once again, how many trees are in your world? That's exactly how many you should do. 2 or 3 or 4, whatever the canvas and your imagination decides. So let's have a little guy right here. This one could be in the background, we don't know. It just kind of disappears off here. And maybe we'll have a little bigger one next to it. Maybe it'll be in front of it. We don't know. We'll decide that eventually. Ooh, a little more trunk in this one. I like it. Maybe it will be in front. So I just tap right on over. And all that's just going to kind of disappear there. All right. What else do we got? We've got a dirty brush here. I think this 1-inch brush can be cleaned super quick. And let's see how much of this stuff we have. Sometimes when it's all splayed out flat like that, it's hard to really tell. So let me pick up a little bit more. Do I have enough? I think I might have just enough. Pick up some color, getting it right up here on the tips of the bristles. And let's make our foreground. Really only focused on the interesting outer edge here. Pushing up, letting those bristles bend up. And the rest will take care of itself. Look at that. All this down here, we don't really care. It can be tapped or mashed or swiped in. As long as we get some dark color. And, you know, look at that. How did we do it? Are you seeing it yet? Or are you not seeing it? That's what I meant to say. We lost our deep dark purple in our water. But I do love this transition. You know, matches the sky a little bit. That's okay. We had fun time putting the purple in. At least I did. There we go. So, one color, additional color I didn't put out. I didn't have any of this color from the leftover in that kit I was telling you about. A little bit of dark sienna. We're going to use just a tad. Dark sienna to make up our mix. And look at that. Have plenty of that color left over. But not too much. Let us take a little bit of white. Maybe a little bit more white. There we go. Let me try that again. A little bit of titanium white. A little bit of dark sienna. Maybe even a touch of the bright red, yellow ochre. And I just want to create a marbled look. I am making way too much. That's okay. Still want it marbly. There we go. And then I cut a very small roll. And that is going to be a little bit more trunk. We went fancy here. Create a little stalk. And here and there, just an indication of a trunk. There it is. There it is. Even on this little one right here. There it is. Right there. Right there. This paint is very firm. So it's not wanting to stick super easy. A thin paint sticks to a thick paint, not the other way around. So you gotta fight it a little bit. Or you can loosen it up a little. You'll know what to do. Now, we need our highlight brush. I was looking for it. Okay. A single drop here of the paint thinner. I need to work a little bit more of this yellow off the pile. That does it. That does it. A little bit of yellow ochre. Come in here with a touch of the sap green. If it's a little too much, I dull it down with some of the background color. That shadow, initial shadow color. We'll dull it right down. Play around, figure out the color that you like. And now we can put in highlights on these big guys. Is it a little too dull? I'm thinking it might be. Let me add in the other ones here. Even this little guy here gets a little bit. And the one over on this side. Let me take a step back. You know, it doesn't really look half bad. If it was a little too dark for your taste, a little bit more, you can change that color, add a little more liquid white or the cadmium yellow until you get that color that works for you. Make sure that it's thinned down enough. And then let's try a couple of little bright guys. Ones that are catching the light. Highlights to the highlight. That helps them sparkle a little bit. Couple more on this side. Starts feeling good. You want to just hit every single one, but try to avoid that temptation. Just every other. How about that? Start with that. All right. I like the looks of that. Now maybe, I am going to create some bushes here, and I might have to do this a little bit manually. Normally when we're doing highlights here, we just use the brush to thin down and load the brush, but since this paint is so firm, I'm going to do a little bit of that work with the knife. Just need a little more pressure. All right, a little bit more green. Lots of paint up here on the tips of the bristles. And I come up here and just touch in a basic little bush shape. And I can make a few of them. Maybe change the flavor a little, add some yellow ochre to dull it, or even more bright yellow to bring it back up. Let's add in a couple of shapes back here, just to say we did. That bright red or crimson mixed with green is an excellent duller. Those two colors together tend to make brown. So that could work for you really, really quick. Okay. All right, so I don't have those colors out, the ones I just laid out. Well, they're way over there. So I'm cheating a little bit. I'm going to grab a little bit of my normal modern cadmium yellow. It's definitely softer. Okay, so a little bit of that liquid white does quick work of that newest yellow. See that? Lots and lots of paint there. Come up and create our lacy looking bushes here. Little brighter now that we had even more paint in the brush. You can still do the same thing and dull things down. Look at all these little sparklers here. Now, before I finish, I need that knife. We have a little bit of rocks and path action going here. So a little bit of that Van Dyke brown, I'm just going to lay it right on the grass here, right on all that shadow part here. If you can see some of it, that's all we care about. Maybe pull some of it this way. There we go. Now I'll take a little bit of my highlight color. That's the white, dark sienna, a touch of the bright red. And just like laying snow on the mountain, let some of it come off, let some of that brown remain. Reload as needed here, just to put a little highlight on that earth or rock or whatever you think of this as. See that? Just letting it kind of scrape and bump and leave whatever it wants. That way I can come back, either push up and put in little grassy bits here at the bottom, all in between these rocky areas that you missed. There's this low-lying grass here. You just push up a little bit and it comes right off. Looks like low-lying stuff there. In between and around and overlapping the rocky bits. Or you can come back and make more bushes. I think I got a little bit of paint still left in my brush here. Let's see. You can make another bush in front, in the corners here perhaps. Brighten them up. There's a couple more spots here. I do like putting in all this little mossy type grass here, very flat, but with a little upward lilt to it. You see some little upward facing stuffs when you push up. There we go. Now, Nick did add a whole nother tree here. Let's see about putting it in. And luckily for me, it doesn't matter how thick your titanium white is or your Van Dyke brown. Plenty of paint thinner will thin everything down. So let me get back to that. I'm going to come in here with my knife. Got to put in the trunk before we put in all the branches, right? So let's take our knife here and maybe right here we'll put in a nice dead tree. A little bit of that Van Dyke brown, just making a nice dark trunk here. Something like that. And let's say it gets a little narrower at the top. Perfect. Now, if it's not exactly to your liking, yes, go over it. Make the bottom a little wider if it's needed. Make it a little straighter. It doesn't need to be perfect. I'm going to come back with a little bit of my highlight color and just touch one side here, giving a little bit of highlight to the trunk bark. That was it. That happened so quick. Surprised myself. And now is where I would come back, as I said here, with my paint thinned way down Van Dyke brown, rolling that brush between my fingers to get a nice point. And maybe extend this right on up. Add a couple little branches here. One thing I notice here when you're starting out, I'm sure everyone is the same here, getting that paint to flow out of the brush. All you got to remember is have it a little thinner. You don't necessarily need a ton of paint in your brush, but what's there, you just want it very thin so it literally flows out of the tip. Okay? It'll work for you. You just have to let it. You got to give it plenty of thinner and it'll come right off, I promise you. A couple of dead old sticks and twigs there. Occasionally I'll change up the color. You can have them darker. Sometimes they're a little bit worn out and they might be a little bit lighter. So a couple of light ones here and there isn't going to hurt anything. There we go. Now, as needed, I don't necessarily need it in this one. It's hidden pretty well, but if you want to hide the foot a little bit, just tap a little bit of your bush color over the base of the tree, and I think we've got ourselves a finished painting. So, going full Bob here, I'm using some of that bright red, 30-year-old bright red paint to sign my picture today. Thin it way down so it flows right out of your brush, and just with a little light touch, whoa, I can sign this one. I do my initials and the year, but you sign however you like. That was a big 2-4. That was almost as big as my initials. Oh well, live and learn. That's what I got for you this week, folks. Thank you so much, Nick, for your wonderful example here. And thanks, Bob, of course. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.